On this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, we look ahead to Clash of Champions with our predictions for the next WWE pay-per-view. We'll also break down what happened on Raw and SmackDown at Madison Square Garden. That's upcoming this week on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. And welcome back to another edition. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery. Justin, how the heck are you doing?
Amazing.
I like the enthusiasm. As I mentioned, we will talk Clash of Champions. Every title on the line, sort of. I haven't mentioned the 24/7 title. But anyway, we'll give our predictions for that later. We'll go over some of the bigger matches that we're looking forward to. But I want to jump into this week. We highlighted at the end of the show last week Madison Square Garden. First time in a long time they've been there for TV. They're still doing house shows all the time there. But it's been a while since it's been on Raw, SmackDown, or a pay-per-view. And they tried to really build these shows up, knowing that at least on Monday they'd be competing against a football doubleheader with the NFL. I think, in particular, Raw, actually, they put a really nice card together. It was an intriguing selection of things for us to tune in for, but I don't know that it really delivered. Certainly the numbers did not deliver. It looked like Raw was an unmitigated disaster, and the fact that it was a decent but not incredible NFL doubleheader leads me to believe that this could get even worse over the next 3 or so months.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it because they kind of pumped it up to a lot. The guard and blah blah blah. I thought the crowd would be really into it. And honestly, the crowd was okay. It wasn't a Chicago crowd or Philly crowd by any means. I thought the crowd was just okay. I thought there was okay parts, but a lot of it fell flat for me. And the one thing I noticed especially, when Austin came out, he was by far the most over person there. And I think that's a problem with the current product.
And you look at SmackDown, you could probably say the same for Taker.
Right. They have to bring back these, older guys, in Austin's case, that hasn't wrestled in quite some time. And they're more over with the crowd. And honestly, their presence in the ring, like he was in the ring with Rollins, Braun, AJ, and out of them, Austin was clearly the best on the mic, the person that was most intriguing, who had the most charisma. And that really, to me, lays the problems with the current WWE product. I mean, there's a guy who's been out of the the game for such a long time. He steps back in and immediately just clicks, and especially up to like Rollins. Rollins to me just comes off so generic and blah, especially when he's in a ring with someone like an Austin.
You're talking like character-wise, promo-wise.
So, yeah, charisma. That the charismatic, ability. That ability to be like, oh man, I need to see that guy again. Rollins might be good in the ring, but his promos, his personality, it doesn't jump out at you.
I agree, and I don't want to get too much on a tangent about Seth Rollins, but two things jump out to me. One, when he was sort of, outkicking his coverage in a sense. He wasn't supposed to be the main guy, supposed to be Roman, but Rollins was delivering those great matches, and fans naturally rallied behind him because he was so good in the ring. That worked. That's sort of gone away now because he is the top guy. He is like the company favorite on that side. The other thing that I always think about with Seth Rollins is he was so good as a heel when he turned on the Shield. I have to wonder maybe if he's really better suited to be a heel.
I always thought, I think most people always thought he would be the face out of the group. He worked as the slimy heel because I honestly think he's easier to hate. I actually think his the personal attitude, I don't know, at least what comes off through his promos and his tweets.
Did you like him back then as a heel, though? I thought he was terrific.
Right, I did too, because at least what comes through in his promos and clearly what he tweets, he comes off kind of like a douchebag, and it's almost like you want to boo him. At least that's how I feel. Like, he doesn't come off very genuine. Like, I don't know. At least that's for me. I don't get, great, I want to go have a beer with that guy type of vibe.
But Roman seems like a good guy by all accounts, and that didn't stop fans from hating him.
I think, unfortunately for him, the cancer kind of humility. Like he showed a human side to him, not just like the character Roman Reigns that we all were booing because Vince
I
shooting.
get that.
But like, oh, this guy, like, he seems genuine. He seems cool. Like, okay, I mean, people still kind of boo him. I think just to boo him. But
it's been very positive for the most part. I remember WrestleMania was like crickets, and that was kind of disappointing. But I actually think like the last 3 or 4 months, the crowd's been behind him.
And especially given the angle he has to work with right now, it's not very good. It's actually pathetic, and it sucks that he's in this spot. But I at least like don't mind. I don't mind Roman. I always had a problem with his booking, but Seth, I don't know, something just rubs me the wrong way with him.
So we mentioned Monday Night Football and the ratings being just a disaster for Raw. Here's why I think that's really disappointing. Other than they really promoted the show, and you have to wonder, like, if Austin had not been advertised on it, what the rating might have looked like. It certainly wouldn't have been better. It could have been quite a bit worse, actually. But you look at some of the matches, and I think it's what the fans that are like hardcore fans, longtime fans, insider type fans would want. Grand Metalik against Rey Mysterio, like, to me, yeah, I understand that's not going to appeal to a casual fan. That's what, if AEW had put that match together, everyone that watches AEW would say this is great. WWE doesn't do stuff like this.
Right. But did you notice the crowd reaction was pretty blah for that?
Right, because I think casual fans don't care. And that's where, like, it's Vince's old style of appealing to a wide group versus, like, what Triple H has done with NXT and what us fans want, but it just doesn't work. So, like, they're giving us what we are asking for, but it's not working overall.
Here's my problem with that is when I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, this should be good." And there were some really nice spots.
Yeah, it was quite a solid match.
Yeah, I found that match enjoyable. I saw that match. The problem with that is you threw it out there with no given reason to a WWE type of crowd who's not really going to respond to that type of match. Like, they're just like, this guy who's in the Lucha House Party, what's this guy? This guy's a loser. Oh, Rey Mysterio, yay, he has a cool mask, but that's about it with him.
Because work rate doesn't get over with people that come with their little kids and they
And then Vince would be like, "Oh, see, nobody cares." But you have to give these guys chances week after week to build up their characters. You can't put Cedric out there one week and a crowd might go, "Oh yeah, that guy, yeah," and then be like, "Oh well, look at that, he's done." Like
But they have built Cedric and Chad Gable, right? I mean, you were skeptical about what would happen with Cedric when he lost for the King of Ring. Now he's got a match against AJ Styles after winning the main event of Raw.
Right. But I'm still a little skeptical. Like, this is good for him, but I don't expect him to win. And where does he go from there? I mean, that's always the next question. Where do these guys go? Like, Buddy Murphy had a nice push. Where's Buddy Murphy at now? You see, like...
Well, I can actually sort of answer, maybe not this past week, but remember... It was kind of surprising he lost to Ali when he did in that King of the Ring tournament. So it turns out, my understanding, this is really kind of tough, Buddy had requested a vacation well in advance. So that's why he lost that round. I don't know if he was going on vacation the next week or how long it was. That's really tough. I could see that being like a really Buddy being torn about that. So I don't know if maybe that's why he hasn't been on, because maybe it's like multiple weeks or something like that. I would suspect that it was probably just that next week that he wouldn't be able to work, so they couldn't have him win. But I think that he'll be okay, because they have made me believe, like, guys that the internet fans have been clamoring for, they're at least getting chances, like real chances. Like Cedric and Gable have gotten legitimate chances to win over the crowd, and I think those guys have done that.
To a certain degree.
Definitely Cedric has won over the crowd, I think.
Well, I've always been a fan of Cedric from the first time I saw him years ago in Ring of Honor. I got to see more.
But if he's in the ring with Austin, Justin, you're going to be saying the exact same thing that you just said about AJ Styles and Seth Rollins, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, what does that solve, putting him in that spot then?
I think Cedric's even worse when it comes to cutting promos. No offense, like, I think he's great in the ring, but he's horrible on the mic. I mean, 100%.
So if WWE, to a large degree, this week and in recent weeks, has given us what the internet wrestling fans have wanted, and it hasn't led to increased ratings or more buzz, what should they do?
Well, here's the problem when you say increased ratings. The internet wrestling community, people that complain, people that are watching this, me and you, okay, we pretty much watch no matter what. They're not the audience they're trying to get. They're the audience they constantly have. So the ratings aren't increasing because that community is already watching. That's who is watching this show.
Isn't it Vince and company in their right to say, like, I don't care what you guys are going to say. I'm going to do whatever I want. I think Baron Corbin will draw in more of an audience than Cedric Alexander and Chad Gable.
There is truth to that. The problem is now when it's no longer working, that's the problem. Maybe in years past you can say that, but that audience is gone. It is gone. I don't know how much of the people that like watch Raw, I guess like a little over 2 million total. It dropped below 2 in the 10 o'clock hour. Out of those 2 million,
because everyone wanted to see the Raiders, right?
Without AB, but even without football, they were getting maybe 2, 3, 2, 4. So they say 2.5 million for How many of those 2.5 million people are actually casual fans? How many are the hardcore fans? 1.5 million? Are they only got like 1 million casual fans right now? Like
right.
That's their problem. The people that got hooked 10, 15 years ago left, never came back. They probably had kids. Their kids never got into it. That's the problem. Like, I got into it because my dad watched. And if I stop watching, I doubt my kid's going to watch.
Will the NXT model ever work on the main roster to get it back to what it needs to be?
Yeah, I think it can. The problem is you have to do it and stick with it. You have to maybe plan it out for a whole year. Like, we're going to stick with this type of format for a year. See if we can gain any traction. You also need to have the stars to do it. Just because you can wrestle a great match, you still have to have some type of ability to cut a promo, to be charismatic. You can't just go out there and have a great match. For me and you, I could accept that all day long. But for the 10-year-old kid at home, he needs a little bit more than that.
Right. I understand. It is sort of like a weird spot that the company's in. They do what's right by us to a large degree. They give these great wrestlers the opportunities, and the reward, at least short term, is you don't see anything in terms of the numbers increasing. Speaking of internet favorites versus Vince favorites, Raw had a pretty good triple threat match for the King of the Ring semis. Corbin, Joe, and Ricochet. Obviously, Corbin won that, so he's probably going to be the next King of the Ring. What did you think of that? Because to me, that was like a defining moment for Baron Corbin, as crazy as that sounds, because the crowd, he was the guy out of the three that crowd was reacting to, both positive and negative.
Well, clearly he's the guy you love to hate. He's the heel. I thought the match made Ricochet look pretty good without him having to take the pinfall.
Although Joe's lost so many times, he's almost like Bray Wyatt a few years ago, where it's going to be tough for him to become credible.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Joe because I've always been a Samoa Joe fan, but he's kind of broken, which sucks. But Corbin is what Corbin is. Like I said,
what he is he seems like he's getting better every week in the ring.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm not a big fan of the King of the Ring anymore. I used to love it as a kid growing up, but the last couple King of the Rings have just been horrible. Usually you get saddled with a crappy King gimmick, and it usually actually brings you down, not brings you up.
But this one sort of felt like they were making it important, that they were allowing the matches to really be a highlight of the show, and that it was going to, maybe even if you don't get the right person winning, it was going to mean something. I thought that at least. Yeah. And I feel like after what happened on Tuesday, that's sort of out the window, because Elias gets hurt, he gets replaced by Shane. And I will say, I think Gable was probably going to win that match all along, because if Corbin was winning, they're not
going to have Corbin versus Elias in the finals,
and they certainly weren't going to have Corbin versus Shane.
Right.
Everyone's head would just explode. But so Shane puts himself in, which I think is smart, because it gets Gable, like, people are behind Gable just because they hate Shane. So Gable wins, and good, perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. It gave Shane a valuable role of putting over someone, or so we thought. Here's where it goes downhill. the end of SmackDown, you aren't going to remember that it's Gable beating Shane. What are you going to remember?
That Shane beat down Kevin Owens
and fired him.
Yes.
So that overshadows the King of the Ring semifinals to determine the finals. And then I believe just at the very end of SmackDown, Tom Phillips is like, we'll find out who's king next Monday. I thought all along, and based on the internet, I think about 95% of people thought it was going to be a Clash of Champions. Makes sense, right? You finish your semifinals the week of Clash of Champions. It's all the titles, but this is like sort of, you could, throw it in there in that same breath. There's going to be a big pay-per-view match. There's going to be buzz because you get Corbin, hated, Gable, this big underdog. I actually was really looking forward to it. And now that it's going to be on Raw next week, I feel like it has become so insignificant. They've ruined the tournament in a span of 5 minutes at the end of SmackDown.
That's why I'm hesitant with everything they do now. People are like, "Oh, King of the Ring," and I'm like, they'll screw it up. And I mean, some of the matches were good, some weren't. Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable, I remember being very disappointed. They were given like 4 or 5 minutes, and that match could have been really special. Vince, it's just, I don't know. I mean, they got Shane back on TV, did the whole Kevin Owens thing and fired him. The thing I picked up at the end, I actually heard the AEW chants.
I didn't, but that's hilarious. And I really hope WWE learns their lesson and let's not fake fire people on TV anymore, please.
Right. It's a McMahon firing. It's a thing people bitch about the most, right? Right. Authority figures, McMahon's. Oh, here we go again. Same stuff for the last 25 years, it seems like. And so, I found that Monday, because at first I was like, oh, I must have missed that. I thought it was Clash of Champions. And then I looked on Twitter, and a bunch of people reacted to Monday, what the Monday? And I'm like, that's just them blowing it off. They're like, look,
this seems really dumb, though, doesn't it?
Maybe they think it's going to bring in ratings.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, you could just say we're going to do 20 segments of the Firefly Funhouse, and I feel like that would do better ratings.
It could. I mean, at this point, you might as well try.
So, Justin, without going into too much detail, you know the backstory, but I want to reach out to our great audience here. And, of course, you could follow us, 5-Star Pod Wrestle, Instagram, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. So, the Elias injury, I saw a lot of reports online that were wrong. People either thinking it was a storyline, which I understand that aspect because it seems like, oh, they got to throw Shane in there. Well, they're just faking this. But people saying that, and then Meltzer said something that at 5:30 yesterday, they're rewriting the script to account for the injury, so on and so forth. So I was just kind of like, all right, I didn't say anything, but I'm gonna point out that these people are just wrong about this. Never engage people on Twitter about anything. I just feel like it just leads to frustration and people not believing anything you say was basically the lesson that I learned. So I'm just never going to tweet about anything that I know ever again, I would say.
Twitter is where you go to tweet your opinion, and then everybody else comes at you and tells you that you're wrong.
Well, so, and I get that, but here's the thing. I knew enough to know that these people were wrong with what they were saying, and I wanted to point that out, which maybe was dumb in the first place.
But here's the problem with you're not credible because you're not open with your source. So if you were, maybe people would believe.
Let me tell you, Justin, wrestling journalists make up a lot of crap, okay?
Yes.
They guess, they just speculate on stuff. I'm sure you've seen a lot of them, and you maybe even know some on Twitter that what they put out there, it's an educated guess. And we do know WWE does change stuff. So when Meltzer says plans change and everyone makes fun of him, that's true. You can get an actual report and then Vince comes in and changes his mind a couple days later. But the Elias injury occurred last week. And so he was clearly going to be out of this. It was just a matter of how they were going to work it out of the storyline. And I kind of figured Shane would take his spot. So, I mean, I knew enough to know that these people saying that Tuesday afternoon the plans were being changed, that just doesn't add up. So, I don't know. I get frustrated.
Unless they're talking about they had a different plan in mind. I mean, I don't think we know that.
Well,
maybe
you never really do know. I mean, and I was joking, a Elias going to go out there with his, his broken ankle and like eat a roll up from Chad Gable in a match or something, and then he's just gone for 2 months.
I think too. I think every week now for like 3 weeks, reports that McMahon has rewritten SmackDown, very late in the day.
That like I did start thinking like, when do you think they actually like write it? Do you think it's that day, or like what else do they do during the week?
Well, shouldn't you write it like during the week, but pretty much have an idea anyway? Like if you're booking long term, shouldn't you have an outline anyway, week to week? Like, okay, and then we know what we want, and then we'll just fill in the pieces here.
Yeah, I would be very interested to hear exactly how that process unfolds, because again, he was injured last week, and like that diagnosis was made towards the end of last week. So it wasn't like Tuesday they're going in thinking that he's going to be wrestling in that match. Or if they did, there's some real failure with communication.
Right,
right. So anyway, that was just a little frustrating, but I guess I've learned my lesson that being correct on Twitter isn't worthwhile. So Clash of Champions is this Sunday. I like the idea of the pay-per-view, but I have to admit, like, it doesn't feel all that significant. And it doesn't even feel like they've tried with about probably a third to a half of these matches. And I mentioned at the onset, 24/7 title, I'm sure they'll do some skit, but they haven't even like pretended that's a thing. And the tag team titles, the women's tag team title, it really only feels like there's about 4 matches that matter. And then Roman Reigns and Rowan, which is not a title match, but that gets on there and not King of the Ring.
How is that on there? Because
they never said that you can't have non-title matches. They just said every title has to be defended.
What's going to be real funny is a title match will be bumped to the pre-show.
Probably 2 of them at least.
Yeah, for that to be in the main card, and it's not for a title. Not that I'm complaining, I'm just saying pay-per-view theme, it should be all the titles on the pay-per-view. That's all I'm saying.
Does this theme work for you?
I really do. I mean, it's a B pay-per-view. I mean, it's I have no problem. It's cool. I think every pay-per-view, every belt should be defended. That isn't that the point of being a champion?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the vast majority, and maybe you leave off 1, maybe 2. If you scale back the card, have like 7 or 8 matches for your pay-per-views, then it's a lot more justifiable not to include every pay-per-view.
Well, the problem is they have so many belts.
I think so. They have like 10, right?
Yeah, it's a lot to like fit in. I mean, WWE Universal, 2 secondaries, 2 tag teams, 6 women tag teams, 7, 2 women, 8, 9, 24/7, 10, 205 Live, 11. Hell, if you want to count the NXT, 12, North American, 13. There's a lot.
Yes, there is. So let's kind of break it down. I'm not a huge fan of Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman storyline, but I guess it hasn't been a disaster like I thought it could be. It hasn't ruined Seth Rollins as a face because the fans still dig him. But I do wonder when those guys face off.
I was going to say, let's wait until the match to see.
Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman, face versus face. I'm glad that they didn't turn Braun heel. But I might speak too quickly here. Who knows how this is going to unfold, because my guess is that match takes place after their tag team defense.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking probably that closes out the show. I don't know for sure, but I think it probably would. I'm going with Seth Rollins because I think that he's probably going to hang on a little bit longer. Braun's not the guy to take it, especially in a face versus face type of scenario.
Yeah, I'm going with Rollins. I just think it would be pointless and stupid after trying to build Rollins up as the face and all the work they put into it to beat Lesnar and all that, just for him to turn around and lose it right to Strowman, who
almost
couldn't
like
beat.
It was pointless for him to beat Brock at WrestleMania and then have Brock beat him.
Right, it would be completely pointless, which makes me think it could happen. But it would be completely pointless booking wise.
Who is the guy that takes Seth Rollins' title?
Oh, I have no idea. And honestly, they're going to be doing a draft, and they're supposed to keep the show separate really in a couple weeks. So I think we need to see where everybody, kind of goes each way.
To that point, then, does he even stay on Raw? Do they do the title swap?
Well, I don't know what match you were going to bring up next, but maybe I'm going to force your hand here. Okay, Becky Lynch defending the title against Charlotte.
I can go on the fly, Justin. We'll go with that match. Let's do it. I got the graphic ready and everything.
Because when you're
you
talking,
said Becky and Charlotte. At least get it right. It's Becky and Sasha.
Oh, sorry. That's what I meant.
Come on, blue hair, Justin.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody. But it's a little late for me. I have Becky losing the title and dropping it to Sasha. One, you're not going to bring Sasha back with all those build-up just to have her lose because that's going to cool her off too much. Two, I also saw apparently the leak poster of SmackDown on Fox and the people they have on the show who's on there, Becky, without holding the title. So that also kind of reaffirmed my thought that Sasha would win. So Sasha stays on Raw as champion. Becky moves to SmackDown, could then feud with Bayley, which again leads me to the next match, who I think is going to beat Charlotte, keep the belt. You could have Becky versus Bayley. That makes me think, though, that Rollins, though, would move to SmackDown because they're a couple. And usually WWE does try to keep couples together. And with those two being high on the card...
they're engaged now, too, right?
Right. And with those two being high on the card, they would probably get their way. So does the WWE champion and the Universal champion switch in the draft? That title goes to SmackDown. The other title goes to Raw. With Seth being more of the face of the company, Fox probably would want Seth as a champion on their program. So I am going out saying Seth will keep the belt and move to SmackDown with it.
And you're picking both women's, or you're picking Sasha to win.
To beat Becky, to keep the belt on Raw.
And then Bayley retains.
Retains against Charlotte, will continue to stay on SmackDown and be their champion. And then you could then have the Becky versus Bayley feud for the belt, if you so choose.
So let me. Well, first off, I actually have the opposite. I have Becky winning, and here's the thing: I don't think they're going to ruin Sasha. I think Sasha is going to lose by like a fluke, like a roll up, or maybe gets DQ'd. I think that will continue. You do have the wrench in the plans, however, with the seemingly a real brand split upcoming.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think that they're going to give it to Sasha yet. I think it's maybe... I mean, I could see that happening down the road, but I'm picking Becky to win. Now, I'm actually picking Charlotte to win the SmackDown Women's title because I feel like Bayley is a really awkward spot right now, where she's sort of a heel but more a face, and it's just very difficult to book a champion and have their challengers when you don't even know like if she's a face or a heel.
Well, that's why if Becky moves over, she can feud with Becky, and it's clear face versus heel. And then maybe Bayley somehow helps Sasha beat Becky, and it makes an easy transition.
Where does Charlotte go in all this then?
I would probably, you got to keep 2 and 2. Like, you can't have 3 and 1. She then gets drafted over to Raw, and you can't have her and Sasha feud. I still work.
There's a lot of issues with this. I mean, honestly, right. I actually do think both these women's matches are intriguing. I would be fine with Sasha winning and Bayley retaining. I feel like Charlotte, we've already seen Charlotte do this too many times. Like, we've seen her and Becky to the point we don't want to see it. We've seen her and Sasha to the point we don't want to see it. And you can't even change the dynamics like heel versus face to make that interesting. Her and Bayley, I don't think is overplayed yet, but maybe they continue that for another month or so. But I just think Charlotte as their champion is what they want going to Fox. And as far as their world champion, I'll get into that now because I think the person Fox wants for the WWE title is Roman Reigns. And for Roman Reigns to get that title, he probably beats Randy Orton. So I am picking Randy Orton to defeat Kofi Kingston. I actually thought they were going to pull the trigger at SummerSlam and maybe got cold feet because that ending was bizarre and it seemed like something that maybe they threw together last minute. I'm thinking Orton wins. I hope that Kofi wins, but I'm going with Orton because we know, he's a very credible champion. It seems like a guy that Vince has always been fond of. And it sort of seems like Kofi's already exceeded what we expected his title reign to be. I don't know if Orton's the right person to end it, but I do think it could be like a transitional thing leading into Roman on Fox as your champion.
Yeah, I'm going with Orton too. The main reason is I said since day one that Kofi would not make it to Fox as the champion. I just didn't see it. So I'm going to stick with that prediction and go with Randy Orton because he is the bigger name. Not that I don't know how much he's known to the general public.
I think compared to the rest of the roster, he's got to be up there with just about anyone.
I just don't see Fox, Vince, and company going into that first show with Kofi as their champion. I think it's going to be Orton.
Let me ask this real quick. Is this the last pay-per-view before Fox?
Yes. Yeah, because that's October 2nd. So we're like 3 weeks out.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I would expect that show will probably have a title change itself that night.
Well, I was like, the only way...
And that's maybe where Roman wins it.
It could be a short thing because they're not going to have Roman beat Kofi.
Well, who knows? But if they do, like, you're just asking for
you're asking for trouble. Yeah, but I think it sucks that it's Orton that has to beat Kofi, just from the storyline purposes and what really went down 10 years ago.
But that's sort of like the MO with Kofi, right? I mean, that would get the fans feeling empathy for him, sympathy, whatever, something.
Well, both. Yeah, I guess, but I feel like he should be the one who wins this feud, not loses the feud. And if he drops the title to Orton ends up winning the war. So
right.
that's kind of odd, but I just don't see Kofi going in as champion.
But it does also maybe give, if they do, and again, I'm speculating, but if it is Roman who takes it from Orton, well, Orton's way more of a villain if he ends Kofi's reign, because I think Kofi's still pretty popular. So it accomplishes a lot there. You
would think people would want to see Orton beat, we'll see, or do people boo because they see he just beat him so he can drop it to Roman. I don't know. And then I assume Daniel Bryan and Roman are going to feud. I mean, at some point.
I was shocked that Daniel Bryan was not on SmackDown this week.
Yeah.
So the other matches, their title matches, I don't think that they really matter. I think we touched on the 4 big ones, so let's run through these quickly. AJ Styles and Cedric Alexander. I will say I'm looking forward to this just because this could be another breakthrough moment for Cedric. Is he going to win? My pick is no, he won't. But it's not necessarily about him winning. I think if he looks great and puts on like a match of the night, which this could certainly be, that does more for him than just, like a somewhat meaningless secondary title. Okay, let's say he's the U.S. champion. What does that mean? It's a bigger deal to me if he goes out there and steals the show on a pay-per-view with AJ Styles. That's something you'll remember way more than like a 2-month title reign with a secondary title. So I do think it's big for Cedric, even though I expect AJ to retain.
Yeah, AJ retains, and I expect this match could be a show stealer if allowed. It could be the match of the night. It very well could be with the talent in the ring, but AJ retains.
By the way, real quick, how about the 205 Live guys getting like some pretty big pushes between Cedric, Buddy Murphy, Ali has kind of been hot and cold, and then Chad Gable even did some 205 Live. That just shows you how much talent at some points have been on that show, and it's certainly good to see those guys rewarded. Does anyone care about Nakamura versus Miz at all?
I'm sure somebody does, but I'm not that person.
Nakamura, to me, hasn't been ruined by WWE. He has failed when given opportunities. I think this one is on him. I just don't care, and I don't think he's having good matches at all. And The Miz, like, turning face has been a disaster for him. I don't care about this match. I truthfully would prefer this one to be on the pre-show over some other things. I think Nakamura retained just because they threw Sami Zayn with him, so they seem to be a little bit more invested in him than what they've been doing with The Miz.
I got nothing else to add. I think you summed it up perfectly. I'm going with Nakamura.
The only non-title match, Roman Reigns and Big Red Eric Rowan. Man, Eric Rowan was at crickets when he. And like the thing is, I don't mind Rowan, but I don't want him in that role. He doesn't deserve to be in that role. Him with like Harper, that was really good as the Bludgeon Brothers. That worked for me. This does not work. People don't care. To your point, probably wasn't supposed to be Rowan from the get-go. This isn't going to help Roman. I mean, he might get cheered because no one's going to cheer for Eric Rowan, but man, I don't care about this match either.
Now, this match, there might be a lot of crickets. Maybe a little cheers because it's Roman in there, but Roman wins.
You're tired. You're just ready to fall asleep even talking
honestly,
about it.
The thought of that match what makes me want to sleep. Roman's going to win because Rowan ain't going to beat Roman. Come on now. So, yeah, Roman Reigns wins.
Rapid fire. Seth and Strowman defended tag team titles against Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. I am going with new champs because I think they're going to really plant the seeds for the Universal title match later in the night. There'll be some miscommunication. Strowman and Rollins end up dropping the titles. Stupid champs, but it's going to be Ziggler and Roode.
I'm going to say the champs retain, even though I think your idea is very plausible. I'm just going to want them to retain strictly on the fact that I think Ziggler and Roode are just a crappy tag team.
Fair enough. I did not even remember this was a match until I looked it up. New Day against the Revival has been promoted horribly. New Day is always awesome. This could be, honestly, an incredible match, but the lack of build is dumb. I think the New Day wins, but if you ask me, like, when did the New Day even win the tag team titles, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, same. I'm going with the New Day. The Revival, they win the belt, they drop it right back. It's the same tag teams that are going for the titles, and then the tag teams that they don't, use, they just throw two guys together. The tag team divisions are a joke; they're a mess. But yay, go New Day!
Bliss and Nikki Cross defend their titles against Fire and Desire, Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose. It's a weird dynamic again, like basically three heels and one sort of face. I'm picking Bliss and Cross to retain.
I'm going with Bliss and Cross. After being called ugly, I don't think they're going to have her drop the belts on Sunday.
And lastly, I honestly, I'm being serious. I hope this is not the last time that the Cruiserweight title is defended on a pay-per-view, but there's some reports that show could be in jeopardy. Maybe it becomes part of NXT, which wouldn't be a disaster, but I hope 205 Live does stick around and maybe just gets a fresh start. Drew Gulak against Humberto Carrillo. Justin, do you know who that is?
Is it Del Rio's son?
It is not. It is not. And Lince Dorado, the Golden Lynx. I'm going with Drew Gulak. It could be a good match again, but people they're not gonna react at all. Like Tozawa, Jack Gallagher, those guys get reactions. Humberto Carrillo and Lince Dorado probably won't.
Yeah, hell, I'm going with Drew Gulak because he's a champion. I haven't watched 205 Live in months.
Justin,
sure.
you are missing out.
I've seen video clips, and some of the sequences and spots seem pretty insane. Definitely something I would like. It's just there's just too much wrestling and not enough time in the day.
Wait till NXT goes to 2 hours next week, buddy. It's going to get even worse.
Wait till AEW shows up in 2 weeks. Real quick, because you're going to ask if there's anything else I want to talk about.
You know me well.
Yeah. 30 seconds here. The first 2 weeks, NXT, the first hour is going to be live, and the second hour is going to be on the network. That is stupid.
I didn't hear that. I don't understand what that even means.
Yeah, like the first hour will air live, like on USA, and then if you want to watch the second hour, just switch over to the WWE Network for $9.99. First month will be free.
And then they're going to take that away and go 2 hours on live TV.
When they go up live against AEW, yes.
That's all right. Well, Justin,
exactly. Stupid.
It's news to me. All right, Justin. Let's quickly look at the predictions. And again, we were pretty similar. So we agree Rollins, Orton. We disagree on the women's matches. We have the opposite. I have Becky and Charlotte. You have Sasha and Bayley. Styles, we agree Nakamura, Roman. We disagree on the men's Raw tag team title match. I think there's new champs. You think Rollins and Strowman retain, and then New Day, Bliss and Cross, and Drew Gulak all retain. That's it for this week. I'm headed to Vegas, Justin, but the good news is I will be back in time next week for another edition. We could talk about Clash of Champions and break it all down. I'm sure you're looking forward to it.
You know me all too well, Clash of Champions, baby. Woo!
All right, that's going to do it for this edition. 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check it out. Also, follow Justin Lowery on Twitter. He deserves it after this incredible performance here tonight.
Thanks.
All right, that's going to do it. We'll catch you again next week here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.